Hi, welcome to Art Talk. I'm Andy Jones, your host, and today we are going to be painting on top of Yasmin Laban's artwork. So today is going to be a fun ride. We went to the thrift store and found this beautiful's not the word for it. We found this print, obviously very 80s. No offense to Yasmin Laban, I'm sure her tastes were much better than this. I want to show you how you can kind of repurpose something, and we are going to just give this a once over. And it's going to be a pretty significant once over. We're going to brighten the colors up, change the flowers, change the background, change the vase. We're giving this a full-on facelift. So get ready, and we're going to get started by putting some colors out on our palette. So we're going to start with titanium white. We'll put out, let's go ahead and get some greens out. We're going to start with a little thicket, which is a nice dark green color. We're also going to put out some lime green, and these are all colors that are in the Art Talk kit. So you can have all 17 of these beautiful colors. This is what I paint with most of the time. And just for fun, let's put out some sap green. It's a dark green, but it's very different than the thicket. So we've got some nice greens out on our palette. For fun, let's put out a little Prussian blue. Just getting a whole bunch of colors out here, and we'll use them in varying amounts as we create this new painting here. All right, I'm going to start with a 1-inch flat brush, and this is a Folk Art Select Firm Bristle brush. And we are going to start around our vase and in this background area, and we're just going to change up the greens that we've got going on there. So I'm going to pick up some thicket and a little Prussian blue. And we're going to do a floral painting, but we're not going to concern ourselves too much with what we're working with here, because nothing that's here is really worth looking at anymore. So we are starting in with our thicket and Prussian blue, and I'm coming right around the vase, just scrubbing this on. And I didn't do anything to this lovely print. It's as it came out of its adorable little frame from the thrift store, and we are going to town.
Andy, just from the get-go, I'm noticing you've put a lot of paint on your palette. That tells me that it's going to take a lot of paint to fix what we have here so far, right?
Well, Stephen, I'm glad that you noticed that. I don't know how much of this paint I'm going to use, but I've found over the years that if you put out a nice size blob of paint on your palette, it's going to stay wet longer than if you put a tiny little bit of paint out. A little drop of paint is going to dry really quick, and so you end up having to keep putting out more and more and more paint. But these large areas of paint will kind of stay wet and make it just easier for you to work. So those of you who are not terribly familiar, the voice that you just heard was Stephen White, who is one of our videographers here at Plaid. Stephen's a good camera guy, does great editing, and you will be seeing more of him on Art Talk. So it's a pleasure to have you here today, Stephen.
Thanks, Andy. Yeah, everybody stay tuned.
Oh yes, there's a good stuff coming your way. We were laughing about things from the 80s, and Stephen unfortunately is not one of those things from the 80s. He was not a gleam in anyone's eye in the 80s, but we are glad that he's here for this kind of 80s print makeover. So now I've picked up some lime green, and I'm just going to scrub some of that on, kind of up here at the top, making sure that we go all the way off the edge. So we're making full use of our delightful print as our kind of template or guideline.
Going into this, what is the plan, Andy? Is it just to cover everything that's on there so far and start fresh?
We're doing a good job right now, but what I'm doing is just starting a floral painting on top of what was there. So I know I've got some flowers up here, some different color flowers there, and a vase here. And we're just going to paint over each one of these areas, kind of adjusting it as we go. So now I'm adding some titanium white to this, because we have lighter colors out here at the edge of our painting. So we're scrub some of that on. And I don't think anybody is going to mourn the loss of our plastic mini blinds in the back of this painting or print. I'm giving it far too much credit there.
It runs all the way from top to bottom, just blinds.
Yes, just blinds. Why someone in the 80s thought this would be a beautiful thing to hang on their wall, quite honestly, I'm baffled. I mean, there was questionable fashion choices made in the 80s, some questionable music, but lots of really good, fun music. Stevens had to endure my kind of 80s playlist this week as we've gotten ready to film this. So,
yeah, who would you consider some of your 80s highlights in terms of music?
Well, you simply can't get around the Power Station. That was a couple of guys from Duran Duran, Robert Palmer, and the drummer from Chic. So their Some Like It Hot song is absolutely classic 80s. But, you know, there was good music all over the place and lots of fun listening to it. And now I can pop in an 80s greatest hits playlist and enjoy my day without ever not knowing the lyrics to a song. Because we only had, you know, the radio or CDs and albums. And that's, you listen to the same stuff over and over and over because everything wasn't available all at once like it is now. All right, so you see I've got some light areas in the background, just trying to hide what's there. And we'll leave some of it showing. We're not going to cover it all up, but I've got a nice foundation done here, and I've been holding the brush as far back on the handle as I can. So if you think about putting the handle of the paintbrush in the palm of your hand and then just gripping the brush as loosely as you can, that'll make it easier for you to paint in a casual, relaxed manner. And that's what we want. No stiff, rigid brushwork. I'm using the corner of the brush quite a bit and just kind of scrub it on there and learning to love what you get on your canvas. I often tell my students, you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit. It's only, I was going to say a canvas, but but for today, it's only a thrift store print that only probably cost a couple of dollars, and you're not going to hurt it, you're not going to ruin it. No matter what you do, it's going to be a nice improvement over what was on here to begin with.
Last time we talked about Vincent van Gogh, who obviously was well established before the 80s, but who is an artist that you can think of when you think of art from the 80s?
Okay, well, I'm probably going to make some people laugh and probably offend a good number of people, but Patrick Nagel was like an artist that you simply could not get around in the 1980s. And he did these very stylized female figures, and they were on dorm walls, apartment walls, they were on album covers, they were everywhere. And I was not a fan of them at all. But that was a very typical 80s artist. Just, he was everywhere all the time. All right, so now let's kind of look at what we've got going on here. This is pretty dry because it was kind of soaking into our paper surface, which is perfectly fine because we're going to move on and do, I think what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and attack the this lovely vase here that is not lovely at all.
Attack is a good word for it.
Yes, that's exactly what we're going to do. So I'm going to put out a nice color called asphaltum, and I seem to be missing a color here. So we're going to take a quick little break while I know I'm not missing anything. I just couldn't see it. Here we go. No need to break to find my true burgundy. So we're going to use a little true burgundy in the vase, and then we're going to put in some nice big pink flowers up here. So I'm going to set my brush aside, don't put it in water, and I'm now shifting down to a 3/4 inch flat brush, And I'm going to start with some asphaltum, which is a nice transparent brown color. And I'm going to change the shape of this vase from this odd oval shape to much more of a round shape.
Yeah, you can see the reflection in the vase from the light that the photographer was using. It's an interesting artistic choice they've made there.
Interesting, good word. That's such a loaded word when you're talking about art. All right, so now we've got some dark color over here on the right, and I'm going to pick up some true burgundy, and we'll just turn this into a nice kind of burgundy pink vase that should be kind of rounded in shape. And you know, if you wanted to do a square vase, you could certainly change your vase to a square shape. Just take a pencil or a piece of chalk and sketch out kind of what you want. And I'm just playing with the shape here, making sure that it kind of looks roundish. And sometimes it's much easier for me to do a little kind of sketcheroo with a paintbrush than it is to try to draw it out with a pencil. I'm thinking that probably looks round enough for our 80s makeover today.
This is already much less harsh on my eyes, I gotta say.
Well, as long as it's pleasing to your eyes, then we're in good shape. We can always quote Keats that a thing of beauty is a joy forever. So we'll keep that in mind. All right, so now we've got a nice kind of burgundy round vase there, and let's just go ahead and put a little bit of a highlight on that vase. And you can see we've really now done a big 180 on what this vase looks like, because it is now no longer the ugly vase that was reflecting both the photographer's lights as well as our plastic mini blinds. I'd like to take a minute to thank Plaid Enterprises for sponsoring Art Talk. They are the makers of folk art acrylics, which I absolutely love using. I've used this paint since I was a young tot, and now that I'm an old fart, I still use this paint. We have a 17-piece set that we've curated just for you. Ordering information is in the description below, and we also have great brushes for you. We have a 7-piece set of Folk Art Select Firm Bristle brushes. These are absolutely incredible. I use them every time I paint. And I've never done that in my entire life. Now, let's get back to our video. I guess my goal today is just to remove as much of the offending print as I possibly can. But it's fun to start with something that isn't quite what you want and turn it into something that's much prettier.
So when you first saw the original piece, did you already know exactly what colors you were going to do, or did you sort of play it by ear?
When I saw the original piece, I kind of recoiled a little bit. It was not something that I would have liked as it was. I thought the arrangement of the flowers was kind of sad, so pretty quickly I knew that my job today was to cover up the flowers, basically change everything. That was my goal, is use what was there as a starting point, but make sure that it was all left in the 80s. And we'll just have something much nicer going on here. And I'm playing just with this true burgundy and white, creating a nice pink color. And we're going to use this up in some flowers as well. So tapping on a little bit of a highlight. And you don't have to smoothly blend your highlight in. I'm just playing with it, seeing what it looks like, adding some more white where I want it to be really bright. And then I'm wiping my brush off. I like to fold a paper towel over the brush, pull the paintbrush through. That leaves all the paint on the paper towel and keeps my hands clean.
Pro tips.
pro tips always. And then I'm just kind of coming in here and tickling the edge of the highlight a little bit, softening by picking up a little bit more of my true burgundy. And I think that's where we're going to leave the vase for the moment. I can't leave well enough alone. You all will learn that I say I'm going to leave something alone and then I change my mind immediately. So I'm putting out some apple red on my palette, and I'm going to pick up some of this nice kind of primary red color, and I just want to put a little bit of a red accent over here on the outside edge of the vase, just for fun. Soften it in a little bit. Just needed a little different tone of red on the canvas.
Andy, speaking of the 1980s, do you, and I know this is going to be a hard question for you, do you have a favorite 80s movie?
Probably not. We've never been a big movie goer. And so the 80s were no different. I couldn't remember an 80s movie if my life depended on it.
Okay, that was a surprisingly easy question for you, I guess.
Well, I mean, if you ask me about an 80s movie, I'm sure I could give a thought on it, but
Okay.
they're just not, they're not bubbling up for me.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not to say in a few minutes I won't suddenly think of some great, 80s movie, the Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Oh, perfect.
That was my senior year of high school. That was a tradition. About 20 or 30 of us from our class went every Friday night. So that was, I don't know why that took that long to bubble up, but a great 80s movie.
And they still show that in theaters today?
It's a classic. And it's much better when you go with a bunch of people that you know and who really know the movie and know what to yell at the screen at the right time. So much fun. Now that's a great 80s memory there. All right, so let's put in, we're going to put in some more foliage here. But we've got to have foliage that comes down across the top of our vase, and we'll just make a big leaf shape there. And don't worry if your leaf shapes are different than mine. That's perfectly fine. And then we'll just give another little leaf there. And here's something that I want to really get across to you. You don't have to beat someone over the head with details. If someone is looking at a floral painting and they see a green shape that looks something like a leaf, they are going to assume that that green shape probably is a leaf or foliage of some sort. And they don't need any more information than that. Just make sure that it's pretty, it's got a nice shape to it. And let's make a little bit of a stem that comes out from our vase, and we'll give it a bit of a leaf shape. And we'll do another one. That doesn't have to be involved. See, got a couple leaves going on there. Let's bring one down over here. So again, doesn't have to be all involved. That's plenty of leaf for everyone to know exactly what it is. Now let's take a little lime green and a little sap green and come back and let's highlight these leaves a little bit. Let's give a little vein to the center of that leaf and come over here and just tap on a little highlight over there. Let's give this leaf out here that's kind of all by himself a little highlight. We're gonna just keep tapping on some highlights on our leaves. And again, I'm not spending an awful lot of time here, just giving the viewer enough information to know that we've got some leaf shapes going on. And we'll wrap up our leaf shape with one going there. All right, our leaves are all dry, and we are now going to start putting in some loose flower forms. So I'm going to put out a little bit of dioxazine purple on my palette. I've already got Prussian blue out, so those are great colors. They are super vibrant. They are incredibly strong colors. So let's go ahead and just put out some aqua here. And I think for the time being, this is going to be good enough for us to go with some loose flower forms. And we're not really calling these any particular flowers. You can interpret them to be whatever you want them to be. So starting with some Prussian blue, I'm just going to put some dark color on. And we're going to let that kind of scooch down here. And scooch is a very important artistic term.
It's in all the textbooks, right?
All the textbooks. Don't look at a textbook that doesn't talk about scooching some color on here and there. But we're putting some of this dark color in to start serving as the base of our little flower forms. And again, moving this color out, I want to make sure that the kind of outside shape of my flower form is a very interesting shape. You don't just want like some sort of rounded puff of flowers, because flowers don't tend to grow that way. They have little ins and outs and little areas that protrude and other areas that recess a little. So let's pick up some dioxazine purple, which is a beautiful, beautiful dark kind of Concord grape jelly color. And we'll put some of that on here and there. Oh, let's go ahead and make a little flower form right up here. More purple in that one. All right, so I'm going to put a paper towel down on my palette, and we're going to wipe our brush with that. And I'm going to pick up some more Prussian blue, and this time pick up some aqua with that, creating a nice kind of blue shade here. And let's start creating some lighter areas of our flower form. And I'm not picking up more paint, but you can see as I'm moving down here where that purple is still kind of wet, I get a different shade of blue, which is lovely. And we'll start over here and we'll put some more of our aqua color where we want our flower form to be the brightest. And I am not at all trying to create individual flower petals or anything remotely like that. I am putting some light aqua color on here and an interesting shape, and that's all I want you to concern yourself with at this point. Nicely formed shapes with interesting color, and you can see that's really starting to look very nice right there. And I didn't have to work very hard to do it. Just letting the color pop off the brush. And if that purple up here is dried too much, I can dab some more on, wipe my brush, pick up some more aqua, and begin to create an interesting shape of a flower up there. As you can see, I'm worrying more about this kind of outside shape than I am about color or flower petals or anything else. We can come back and change anything we want to, but we need to make sure that we have a lovely shape for our flower forms. I think it's very sad when you look at a painting and the flowers aren't interesting, either the color or the shape or the size of them. Everything about your painting, you need to try to create some interest in whatever you're doing. So remember that your flower forms should not be the same size, they shouldn't be the same shape, and they should not be the same distance apart in your painting. Everything you can do to create some distance is exactly what you want. All right, so for something different up here, I'm going to start with some of my aqua as the darkest color that I've got. And now I'm going to pick up a little bit of titanium white. And right up here, we're starting to put this lighter, brighter, whiter color on. A lot of alliteration going on there. And I think this little flower is already so much more interesting than those white spider mums that were on here when we started. Don't remember the white spider mums? Don't worry about it. I don't remember them much either. They were easily forgotten little flowers. All right, so coming back down Going to pick up some aqua and a little bit of titanium white here. And we're going to put some of this color on this flower form, but we're not putting it everywhere. And this is all kinds of fun for me. While I'm doing this, I'm glad that Stephen is not having to hear the 80s soundtrack that's blaring in my head. But it's fun to kind of be a little bit nostalgic for the music of your misspent youth.
Andy, is this something that you do often where you'll find a piece of art at the thrift store and modify it?
It's not something I do often, but there have been times when I have found, I went to a really big kind of, it wasn't really a thrift store. It was more like I don't know what you would call it. They probably called it an antique store, but I did find some old canvas paintings, and they were just kind of sad and brown. And so I did come back and, put a little bit of life into those old paintings. So it's a fun thing to do. I think, if you are starting out with painting and are just beginning to have fun, go ahead and go to the thrift store. Don't invest in, something expensive or valuable to play around with like this. This is time to get comfortable without your training wheels and just have a lot of fun with a painting. All right, so we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. We've got 4 clusters of flowers, and any florist will tell you that you should work in odd numbers. So we're going to put another little flower form on here somewhere. Let's go ahead and put him over here. It just doesn't have to be much, but we do want to make it kind of an interesting shape. And now we've got another cluster of flowers here. So I'm going to take some lighter color and we're going to dab some of that on. And I am using the corner of the brush, the flat of the brush, and I just keep rotating the brush in my hands so that I get interesting marks on the canvas. And as I've got one color on my brush, I'm not hesitating to move it around all over the canvas so that we don't end up with a particular color kind of isolated in one space. So we'll pick up a little bit more white and we'll really start picking out some very light areas on these flower forms. These are the areas that are going to be closest to the light and closest to the viewer. And you don't want to overdo this, but putting a little thought into kind of where you've already built up some light areas, you can really see how you can change the entire look of the painting very, very quickly. Now, we got lots of blue and aqua going on here. We need something else. We need something a little bit more fun. So I'm going to take some lime green and titanium white, and we're going to put some of that lime green color, which is right out here in the painting, and we're going to let some of that come into our flower forms here and there, just as a fun little bit of color. So if you were an 80s person, at least of drinking age, now would be the time to crack open a Zima, which was basically a malt liquor drink that was very popular in the 80s. All right, so we've got our green color going on there, and let's just go ahead and put a little bit of, that's not what I wanted. I wanted some true burgundy and a little bit of this white, and let's put a little purple in there too. So we've got kind of a purpley color with some pink undertones to it. And I'm putting some of these more in the shadowy areas Then let's lighten that up a little bit.
Okay, so I have another question for you, and this may fall more under art theory than art history, but
Okay.
is there a wrong color that you would think could go in there?
Yes.
Like if I just put yellow on there right now, would that be a bad idea?
It wouldn't be the best idea, but it also might not be terribly wrong. What you have to do is put your yellow on in a way that you relate it to something else that's already happening in the painting. So like where I've got some of these green areas, you could put some yellow in there, but you have to make sure that you don't isolate it. And it needs to be kind of an integrated part of the painting. So I'm kind of loving that little bit of dark there and that here, but this flower form needs a little bit of this lighter kind of pinky purple. And this is kind of relating some of the color, here and there in the painting so that it is not necessarily kind of jarring to the eye when you look at a painting. Everything seems to kind of have a reason for being there. All right, so I'm going to take some of this burgundy purpley color and I'm going to come out here and just add a little bit of that on this leaf, and we might add a little bit of it over here because that's going to look good when we put some here on the vase. See, once again, I start putting a color and it needs to be in a few places in the painting so that it all looks like it really belongs together.
We're just trying to make it a little more cohesive, right?
Exactly. You need your painting to look like it belongs together. The previous floral arrangement here had a couple of flowers there and then a couple of flowers up here, and nothing belonged together. All right, I'm just going to lean in here and shape up this right edge with a little purple. I don't know if I made that better or worse, but we certainly made it different. And then I'm going to just darken that up with some burgundy so it looks like it belongs here. Okay, that's got me happy now. So now that I've messed with that side, I need to mess with this side a little bit more.
I'm noticing that the colors that we're using on the vase kind of match your shirt, actually.
Well,
I wonder if that's a subconscious thing or...
who knows? I knew I had to work with some blues and burgundies today, so it's not uncalled for that or unheard of that I coordinate my TV clothes with the paintings that I do. All right, so we're going to get rid of that, and I'm going to take a little bit more of this apple red and just put a little bit brighter red accent on here. But I'm not going to really carry this all over the painting because I don't think that would look really good. But we are coming to the end of this little painting, but I want to put a few little stems here and there. So let's take a little thicket and some Prussian blue. All right, so I've got a little bit of thicket and some Prussian blue on my brush, and I want to create a little bit of stem action here. So we've got a little stem going to this flower up there, and let's just use the chisel edge of our brush and put some stems just here and there. We're kind of filling in loosely some background area with these little stems. Don't fuss with them too much. Don't make them more important than they need to be. You just want to get a little bit of filler going on so that it looks like it could be some other kind of little florally bits here and there. And I want to bring one over top of that little cluster there to give it a little bit more dimension. And I think we're just about going to be done with this.
But we can never leave well enough alone.
We can never leave well enough alone. So I'm going to take some white and a little bit of lime green, mostly white. And I'm going to see what this looks like if I just pull a little bit of color down right across the painting. You got to have the courage of your convictions here. You can't...
no half measures.
No half anything here. Half measures was not what I was thinking. Yeah, I mean, just go ahead and just wisping some of that on. And that's really setting some of this back into the background and making it a little bit more casual. So we've done some vertical stuff. Let's just throw caution to the wind and give a nice little horizontal action there. And then we mess with it more than we should, but hey, it's art talk. We're having fun. So today's takeaways would be you can really adapt just about anything you find in a thrift store. Just pop it out of its frame and have at it. So we changed a really bad floral composition into a much nicer floral composition. We removed a lot of the mini blinds from the top and just created some loose kind of floral forms here, and with some light color kind of set them back into the painting. So I hope this has given you a little inspiration and something to give a try when you have some time at home. Just bust out an old print from the 80s and give it a go.